recording purposes. Start? Awesome. It's on, but we're gonna also kind of do our Jen style sitting and try to make this boardroom session look less boardroom session type, right? So welcome everybody. Really happy to have you guys join us today. I'm super excited to kick off this panel because I just had the pleasure of getting to know these beautiful people that are sitting right by me. And it's an exciting session because we really are going to be talking about our journeys as leaders. We are the next gen, the titans, the people that empower the world in a different way. And we were told that you guys want to hear about what it takes to be this crazy, to do this work, and what our journey has been, and how do we see the world going forward. So I'm going to first quickly introduce myself. My name is Ajita Shah. I'm the founder CEO of Frontier Markets. I had told everyone that there's no chance I'm going to read everyone's bios because it's so long and amazing, but I'll tell you the common points that connect all of us is that we're all entrepreneurs. Yep. We're all empathy creators. We're all passionate workers. We are all game changers. We are all global and local. We all have been impacting millions of people's lives. We have been investors. We've been job creators. We've been helping really think about the nexus of youth responsibility and opportunity and passion and connecting all of that. And I think that's what really gets me so excited to think about the industries and the work that we do. I'll kick off my story, and then I'm going to pass the baton to each person so everyone knows who's in the room. So I, true to Indiaspora culture, I am the lovely Indiaspora Beti. I grew up in New York. My parents are originally from Jaipur. So Jaipur Jain jeweler community, anyone that loves that, the Triple J threat, 47th Street, like all of that is my life. But I basically right after college at 20, moved to India, and I started working in the rural sector. So I was in the microfinance space for about 8 years, won a lot of under 30 awards for the work that I did in that sector, and then I set up my own company called Frontier Markets at the age of 26. And it's been now 10 years. Frontier Markets is the largest platform in the country that connects rural women to opportunities. So we are the Amazon for good, but actually selling all kinds of services in healthcare, digital payments, and finance, et cetera, to the last mile. 35,000 rural women entrepreneurs have gotten jobs because of us and helped over 1 million families get access to solutions at scale. The journey has been interesting because for many of you who maybe at some point grew up in a rural village or came from a rural village family, you understand that rural India is really, really tough. It's very dynamic, it's constantly changing, but it's also the most important place in the world because it's 800 million people. And in the last 10 years, I can tell you that it's been a crazy journey of dealing with everything from demonetization to digitization to COVID to Ukraine to climate calamities. But what made us really stick to our work has been our resilience and our passion. So despite all, everyone always goes, hey, Jaito, tell us about your awards and tell us about what you care. I don't care about the awards, but there's a laundry list. Everyone has a laundry list of awards on this panel over here. But I think what makes it exciting is that when we do get recognized globally as leaders, we take on this responsibility to really start understanding how do we pay things forward. I think what makes us common as a generation or this group of people here is that we don't think about ourselves only. We really are thinking about purpose and value in life, and we're thinking about circles and communities of influence. So today, for me, the footprint of influence is not about what I do, but it's about the 500 jobs that I've created, the 35,000 entrepreneurs that have been created, but also how do we help support the future of policy, the future of the world. So be that center at G20, be the center at B20, help people understand why gender economic empowerment is critical, where digital transforms India, but rural India and Bharat India is really important. So it's been an interesting place to be seen as always the youngest person in the room that with an American accent who actually knows rural India better than anyone else does. So it's an unapologetic reality check that we are bold in working and living in the way that we do and try to make that work happen. So that's the start of my journey. I'm gonna really want to take this time to introduce everyone else. Every one of us here, as said, has a journey, has an incredible, powerful story. And so, I'm just going to say everyone's names, and then I'm going to let you just go at it, and then we're going to get into some questions. And then, of course, we would love to hear from you all as well to kind of reflect with us, right, around what does it take to be a part of this journey? How do you see your own influence and your own footprints, and how do we think about building a better world together? So with that said, let me start with Madhvika. Welcome. Hi. Please tell us your story. Tell us who you are. Why you're such a badass person.
Wow. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Oh, it is on.
You should probably pull it a little bit closer to you.
Is this better?
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Madhvika Bajoria. Lovely to meet all of you. Absolute honor to be here on this panel with all of these fun, amazing people. So I lead partnerships at an organization called AVPN. Not dissimilar to Indiaspora, it is the largest network of social investors who are looking to mobilize capital towards impact in Asia. So anyone who holds capital, it can be financial, it can be intellectual, it can be human capital. If you want to use your capital for good, you can be an AVPN member. And what we do, we're more than 600 members in 34 countries. And what we're together doing with our members is mobilizing upwards of $400 million towards the most pressing sustainable development goals in Asia to close the gap in meeting those sustainable development goals. And specifically around gender equity, climate action, healthcare resilience, some of the most pressing issues of this region, of Asia, and of the world currently. So I'm currently based in Singapore. I'm a very active member of the diaspora community. I have had my education between the US and the UK. My career in the social impact space spans more than 12 countries, and currently I have a Pan-Asia role. So I think if you look at my CV and if you read my bio, you see this crisscrossing global career in the social impact sector. But I think what my bio glosses over is where I came from. And moments like this, when you're invited to a panel with a weighty title like Titans of Tomorrow, gives you pause. It forces you, it compels you to actually reflect on your personal journey. And you're like, okay, this is my bio. It sounds really, I've made it sound really fancy, but let's think of my own personal journey. So the reality is, much like your Triple J thread, I come from a very sheltered community, born and raised in Calcutta, business owning community, and also a very gendered community. Very set, defined roles for men and women in the community. The men all work in the family business, the women marry into other family businesses and keep consolidating the empire, you know. And so for me, I think to even consider a global career in social impact was something so left field. So I think as I sat down to reflect on my journey, I think there were three things that really stood out to me in terms of, you know, how was it that I was able to find my own authentic journey and not mold myself into a path that was laid down for all the young women who come from my sort of background. So three things come to mind. The first thing sounds fluffy, sound cliched, was really being true to myself and what I believed in. So what does this mean? I grew up in an India at a time in the early 2000s when the narrative was all about India shining, the 10% GDP growth rate. The next, I'm sure everyone here remembers, you know, the first time we really broke out and were on the world stage. And I could clearly see growing up as an impressionable teenager that kind of India shining narrative, my family were clear beneficiaries of that and put me in an incredible place of privilege. But what it also made me acutely aware of is all of the inequities and all of the losers in that India shining. It was evident that that was not a uniform story, and I didn't want to be, I felt uncomfortable glossing over it. I mean, something as simple as I remember going at a traffic light, going to school, going to one of the best schools in the city and seeing a girl at the traffic light about my age panhandling, and very naive, simple things like that from a very early age sparked my interest in questions of justice, in questions of equity, and also from the community I came from, a very gendered community. It sparked questions of why do we have these inequities. I had absolutely no idea how you could build a career in this, how you could get a college degree in this, but all I knew was this is what interested me, and I had to be true to myself. You know, when asked what do you want to do, I couldn't say that I want to be this or that when these were the questions I was grappling with, so I knew I had to.
We're going to get into the challenges and what we see in the future,
Yes.
for sure, because it sounds amazing. But I was going to say that what I would also, in the next round of questions, would love to know more about your journey in healthcare as well, right? Because of the work that you did in neonatal stuff. So, but thank you so much for getting us started,
Absolutely.
kick-started, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm going to I'm going to keep going back and forth because I think that's the easiest. So you are up, Sir Vivek. Like, help us understand your empathy and your really complex bio.
Sure. Ladies and gentlemen, how many of you have heard of infant jaundice? How many of you have heard of jaundice? Just raise your hands. So my name is Vivek Parthi. Me and my team, we've invented the world's fastest and the most powerful device to treat jaundice. This is, we've been commercial for the past 2 years. As a company, we are focused just on neonatal conditions. We started off with jaundice. Now we have a camera that goes inside the baby's eye and takes an image of the baby's eye. This is going to be the gold standard in a lot of countries across the world. From that, we've pivoted now we've added another product into our portfolio, which is basically a pacifier that teaches a baby how to suck a nipple. I mean, it sounds very simple, that sucking a nipple. It's a very difficult challenge. It's a very hard challenge for newborn babies. So Neolite, we are a medical device company solely focused on this, in this space. I founded the company about 6 years ago. We've been commercial only for the past 2 years. We've been selling only in the last couple of years. We sell in about 70 countries. We have about 26 patents. I've raised about $28 million so far. Today we're probably at $30 million of cumulative revenue. Really focused on solving for the most empathy-driven solutions and empathy-driven problems. We believe that the epicenter of every problem is not just the problem, but it's also the experience that the patient goes through, especially newborns that do not have a voice. So this story of my company is my identity. This is who I am, and I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona, and I shuttle between the Bay Area and Phoenix. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Vivek, we are going to ask you one obvious question. Why?
You want me to go at it now?
Yeah, do it. 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yes, please. I'm timing. Yes.
So what more in life do you need than an opportunity to build the most powerful device on the planet to treat jaundice, right? So what more of a legacy do you want beyond that, and to be the gold standard, not just for the next 5 years, but for the next 50 years? You have the ability to deploy a product or an innovation or an application of a technology that is going to just take over the entire world, right? So you're not I'm not trying to sell shoes online. I'm really trying to change lives, right? So there wasn't. I'll give you this as a 30-second answer, but then I'll go into a larger expansion as we go into the discussion.
Amazing.
I mean, it is a funny moment when you're like, who doesn't want to create the coolest machine on earth? That changes the lives of people. Hello.
Why are you even asking me this question? Come on, really?
But it's an interesting point, right? You can take your innovation and sell shoes, or you could change the world. And I think that, for me, is why it's so powerful that you are who you are. Let me turn it to you, ma'am. Madam Somdatta. I just started learning about you, like, from earlier today, but then also reading your bio, and it's mind-boggling, the sheer audacity of, like, impact, business, and things that you've done. So tell us a little bit about that journey and what makes you a Titan and what you think about.
You know, I love this. Good afternoon, everyone. I think the audacity comes, Sujaita, from being surrounded by a Shah and a Bajoria on one side, and somebody who's trying to disrupt medicine and medicine at large at the other side, and an under 35 next to him. I grew up in Kolkata, and my life was surrounded by the Shahs and the Bajorias. And on one side, the triple J factor, on the other side, the gendered factor. But guess what? When you go to a school which is surrounded by that, and you're a Bengali Brahmin, so we are very proud about the intellectual factor that we bring in. Don't get carried away by the sing. I dropped an A because in my case, my dad only said one thing. When people always address me as Mr., and I said, Baba, why did you give me a name that is so difficult to understand? He said, it means the daughter of Shiva, and your work will never be defined by the identity of your gender.
Wow.
Your legacy will be beyond that, and that's what I'm doing. I was born with a cerebrospinal tumor. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but imagine being born to two doctor parents, both surgeons, one of them a neurosurgeon, the other is a cardiothoracic surgeon, and I had jaundice twice. So trust me, 87% of kids go through that. And coming from a family of doctors, you hear that all the time. So what you're doing is going to impact a $15 trillion economy. So you grow around those facts and you're expected to follow that suite. But when you spend too many years of your life getting in and out of hospital, because I went through many surgeries to get my motor functions back, etc., you're like, you know what? It's good from far. And I would rather take the influence on these two sides. Disrupt something no Bengali woman ever thought is possible. You either, when the Bajorias and the Shahs fall sick or need help from a lawyer or need intellectual capitalism or the managers, they turn to a Bengali. I'm like, why not disrupt their own industry? Become one of them, And that's how I became a first generation entrepreneur. Was born and raised in Calcutta, a few years in Bangalore, and I speak both the languages fluently because if you do not become involved in the community, you don't build one. Went for my education in US, started my first company when I was 23, exited at 25 with a couple of $1 million in my bank. And imagine at 25, you're a millionaire, coming from a Bengali Brahmin family. The first thing that you think is, life is done. I'm going to retire now. And your dad says, you're crazy. Are you telling that your legacy is over? Like, you said you're going to do something disruptive. So the pressure of your family and your legacy comes into the picture. And then you're like, okay, this is not where it's going to end. So I'm going to basically work with communities and like what you're doing, Ajayta, became an investor, started supporting a lot of women-led foundations and a lot of women-led companies focused on impact, focused on disruption. And it's irony. A lot of times we get asked the question that, why are women founders not as successful as men? I'm like, because we are the ones sitting at the bank saving the money created by the men. That's why the biggest bankers of the world are women and the best chefs of the world are men. We save that money so you guys can go back to doing what you guys are good at, cooking. So see the legacy that we're building, right? But I got bored, started my second venture, built D2C brands that was disrupting, using reverse engineering. So I'm a self-taught coder, by the way. I'm a PhD in economics, but a self-taught coder. Use reverse engineering. So when you go to Amazon and Walmart and Flipkart, when you're searching that keyword, not necessarily the product name, I use that keyword to decide which were the open categories where nobody bought products and created products based on high demand, low penetration, not big brands, and turned that into a $30 million company within a matter of 2 years. So my second one became bigger than the first one. So imagine, more money, you're still under 30. And you're like, life is set. But I wanted to become the next PNG because my father said legacy. I had to take the Bengali heritage forward. So while they were dominating the 47th Street, I wanted to dominate the 42nd Street because I spent a lot of years in New York as well. And that's how the journey of building Asidus, which is my third venture, came into being. I quickly realized that the reason Procter & Gamble's and Johnson & Johnson's of the world are the giants that they are today is not because they do everything. They just create great products, but find distribution and supply chain at the entire middleware and take the products global. So I create, somebody else accelerates. Reach the consumer at the fastest possible route and the lowest possible cost. So 2018, I founded Asidus, which today is a $680 million revenue generating company. And like I say, women build the best businesses. PAT positive, not built on investors' money, but built on funded by clients. And that's what I learned from the Bajorias and the Shahs. If you go to Calcutta or Gujarat or anywhere, remember, they don't build their enterprises by taking money from investors. They first identify the need of the client and ensure that it's an insatiable need that doesn't get impacted based on valuation. The theory of value creation is what Asidus was built on. And within a matter of first 2 years, we became profitable, investors started flocking, we raised the biggest Series A. There was only one big Series A that was raised by a female founder in the last 2 years, and that was Asidus. We raised a 15 million, got oversubscribed, named the who's and who's on our cap table, but we used the money to go after a competition and acquire their market share. So today, if any one of you are on your phone, and a lot of you are, if you go on Amazon or Flipkart and look for a product of Cipla, Himalaya, Dabur, Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser, guess who's fulfilling the product? In 20 countries, 12 marketplaces aside us. So while she said, Madame, I think I'm the madame of this industry,
Awesome.
right? And there's only one woman who's doing it, and that's me. So it feels good to be here.
So, I mean, amazing. And I'm just going to say that what I think is always interesting is, Shah, but Rajasthani. So I take my Marwadi pride with a lot of
Without
passion.
you guys, I
Yes.
wouldn't have come this far.
So I always say that if you combine Marwadi and Mahila together, it is the most lethal business entrepreneur that can be created because they know how to save money, make money, and also create value.
You know,
So-
what my dad always said, that something happened in
Yeah.
the hospital,
Yeah.
and I may have gotten exchange because I was born a Bengali, but I act like a Marwadi.
But
And
you
I
act
said-
like a Marwadi.
But I'm like,
Understood.
without these two lethal combination, the generation doesn't move forward.
Amazing.
That's the Titans.
And speaking of generation moving forward, I'm just so excited to have Anto be the last person to talk about his journey because I just again learned so much. I actually kind of feel like I'm the oldest person on this panel.
Oh, no,
by
you're
the
not,
way.
you're not.
I mean,
We'll keep it a secret.
Okay, we'll keep it a secret. But
Physically,
but I can
physically or
say-
mentally? I feel like MR is the youngest of all.
Amar is the youngest of all, obviously, of course he is. No, but I think, Anto, I mean, just your spirit and your energy is just it's so captivating and awesome. And I just think just learning in the last 5 minutes, all of your principles of how you present yourself is just amazing. So let's start with obviously who you are and what you do, but then also want to know what makes you so energized this. Yes.
Awesome. Firstly,
woke.
thanks.
Yeah, so
Thanks
woke. Yes.
for choosing the Titans over the healthcare.
Yes.
It's truly, a joy being here with all of them. And of course, I've spent some time on stage with Vivek before at our San Jose Indiaspora event. And ever since then, of course, I've spent a lot of time having these conversations. But I thought today I'm just going to quickly introduce myself from the point of view of what I remember myself to be 10 years back. And I probably want all of you to traverse back to that time of your life, which was whenever you were in college and whatever that phase of your life looked like, right? And of course, the reason why I say this is because the kind of person that I was in college was an irrational optimist. And I mean that when I say that because I truly believed that anything was possible. I truly believed that, of course, when I say anything is possible, every single thing that I always dreamt of, always wanted to do, there was nobody coming and saying this is how it had to be done, this is not how it has to be done. While my parents or the system or the university would say that, the energy within the classroom or the overall insatiable want that you had as a youngster was really crazy when you were inside college, right? Because there were so many young people deeply passionate about one thing or the other. And I was in college 10 years back, which means that it was right around the time when entrepreneurship was becoming a thing. There were people, not student entrepreneurs, but India was having some of its, best billion-dollar stories coming out of, I think the first few of them was coming out at the same time. We saw a lot of these, accelerators, incubators sort of pop up in Bangalore, and I'm from Bangalore. I was born and brought up in Bangalore. And I come from a middle-class Malayali family. And and the thing about, my parents were, the first thing that they said, Anto, you do whatever you want, but make sure you get a job and you secure your life. And I always say this, this is where things got really interesting because I completely started understanding where my parents came from because my grandparents' generation was all about survival. They wanted to survive. They wanted to sort of really get through the hardships to create or build their presence. Then comes my parents' generation, which is fundamentally fighting for security. They said, let's secure this place that we have in whatever way. Let's find that security because my mom's a government employee. She works for Niman's Hospital. And my dad worked with another firm, which technically he chose only because of security. And I'd always say that, why are you doing this, Mom? Why are you doing this? They said, and today you have this roof above your head because of that one choice of us. I said, fair enough. But then comes our generation, or the generation that I was part of, which said, I want to wake up and suddenly I have purpose, I want to do what I want to do, I want to do it this way, I have irrational optimism in disrupting, changing the world. And I'm saying these things, my parents would always say that you do whatever you want, but secure yourself first. And this became a fundamental thought from the irrational optimist Anto sitting inside a classroom, which took part in every activity outside of the classroom. Be it a debate, be it going on stage for being a part of a band. I played for a band called Atma. I used to sell wristbands outside of the classroom, going door to door, ask people to buy wristbands because Livestrong bands were popular at the time. I used to do all of these things, and I used to be that kid. And then I suddenly said, at 18, sitting inside my classroom, that I learned a lot more outside of the classroom. That I was doing so much that people were coming and talking to me, and they said, oh, Anto, how do you do this? Can you talk to 10 other people like you in your college and ask them to come and do this for us? Can you tell your friends to come and be a part of this and volunteer with us? Can you get all of your students to come and take part in these activities because students don't come for these activities anymore? Why don't you become the person that makes that happen? So I invariably, because of how active I was as a student, got these opportunities, started going outside of the classrooms, and became that guy to unlock opportunities for other students in my campus. And that became the story of how I realized, what does it take to take a student seriously and not just as a marketing metric? We were a part of what was the attention economy, and that is the economy where we are sold things to, and we are part of that in a very not active, but we have less agency as an audience when you're a student. And we said, if this is the phase of life, which is the largest incubation period of your life, what can we do with this audience? And we are the world's youngest population, 633 million young people under the age of 25. I said, if we channelize this energy into something more meaningful, if we unify this network called the student network into actually taking action and be able to create an economy around that, we'd be able to build something meaningful. That's how the journey started. The problem that we wanted to solve was unify the student network, not defined by which college you go to or which course you do, but by the phase of life of being under the age of 25, being in a college and having that irrational optimism and having that time to contribute to things outside of the classroom. So we took that opportunity, built a network called Under 25. It's a community. It's India's largest student community. We're in 4,000 campuses. And that is, I always say that, in 4,000 campuses, we are in more site offices than most of the political organizations in the country, right? And that's the kind of power students have. We coined that student change-making power. How can we take the student change-making power into more action, both for social action and for action that requires students to be volunteers. And we now have more than, I think 2,000 volunteers who have taken part in building offline festivals, the Under 25 Summit. Last summit that happened in Bangalore had 40,000 students attended. It is the only alcohol-free, drug-free, smoke-free environment where students come together to celebrate to celebrate at a scale that is unparalleled. So you have live experiences, you have media experiences, and you have the entire network coming together, not because of a college graduation ceremony, not because it's Sunburn or Supersonic or because you have the best DJ, but because they want to learn, contribute, and act on something that's meaningful.
Amazing.
So that's Under 25.
Wow, awesome, cool. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe throw one or two questions out, and then I think there's a lovely audience here, so I would love for them to be able to ask questions as well. So thematically, what was interesting for me, and Vivek, we didn't get to hear your personal story, but like thematically, what's interesting to me is that we all kind of talked about three things. One was the gendered society. Yeah. Second was around the pressure that we get from our families, right? And the previous generation perspective. And I think third was ultimately around the challenge of doing something disruptive, which is just not expected of you, right? How did you find, you guys alluded a little bit about how you looked at tackling it, but do you see that the practices that you've taken on to tackle these three things, are they something that can be replicated as a titan? Is there some way to box that to ensure that the next generation finds other tools or ways to deal with it or handle it, and how have you done it, right? That's one question. Yeah. anyone can take it.
The question is how to replicate it. Or can you
Can
replicate
you,
you
yeah,
replicate
give it, because
Can you replicate
we've all
it?
done
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And clearly there's some tools, and I have some jokes
absolutely.
around those
Yeah.
tools. My joke is that so my parents hardcore believed in, kundlis and, what are those guys, right? The
Astrology.
astrologers,
Yeah.
right? So their favorite astrologer that I knew they were going to go talk to, being like, what the hell's wrong with my daughter, and how the hell do I get her to be
Married?
normal
Yeah.
or married or married, both probably. I would talk to him first,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, boss, what are you about to say to them? So I can then turn it around,
Yeah.
and then I can use it as a negotiation tactic
love
to
that.
get what I needed to get done, right? Because you always kind of have to find ways to like practice that. So I'm just saying, there's a small example, but so that's one that I want to throw out. Second one, and then I want to leave it to everyone else, is you've done so much already, and you and there's so much passion around what you've been able to do and achieve. What is keeping you up at night? Right? What's the next big thing, and what's the next big fear? Right? That's the other question I want to throw out to you all. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
Sure. Why don't I start with with the first question, right? So, I think one of the most common threads in order to replicate, and what I've heard so far, I've heard the word identity be used. I've heard the word purpose be used. Right? So let's talk about identity and purpose for a second. What I'm going to talk about is replicating Dr. Maya Shankar. She's another Indiaspora member. She's of the Indian diaspora. She works at Stanford. She's the advisor to the White House on social and behavioral sciences. So let's talk about her concept of identity and purpose as such. How many of you in this room know what your purpose in life is? Just raise your hands. If I put you on the spot, can you tell me what is your purpose in life? Excellent.
better
I'd
put
say
our hands up.
We better put our hands up.
I'd say around like 25% of the room knows what their purpose in life is. And it's a very hard question. It's a very tough question to answer, right? So I feel like that is the most common thing amongst us, because we all have a purpose. We are a people on a mission. How do we get to that purpose? I think has its fundamentals in identifying our identity. So this is a very important concept. It does not have anything to do with age. Identity, I think growing up, we were all asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Do you want to be a doctor? Do you want to be an engineer? Do you want to be a scientist? Do you want to be an astronaut? Right? So I think we probably were the first generation, or maybe we asked ourselves the questions, whom do you want to be? What kind of a person do you want to be? So that way there's this concept called identity foreclosure. Because what happens is, let's assume that you're a violinist, you learn violin until you're 18 years of age, and you go into college, and then you have to suddenly stop. There's that whole aspect of you being a violinist that you just put a pause on. There's an identity paralysis there, right? So, but if you understand why were you enjoying playing violin, it's because you wanted a human connection, right? So you enjoyed pleasing other people. If you understood that that is what you want to be, whom do you want to be, what kind of a person do you want to be, over the labels of, I want to be a physician, I want to be an engineer, I want to be a scientist, I think that was something that we were either gifted with because of the way we were raised, or because we were activated when we were born. I have no clue how, but the most common thing amongst the young achievers, the next generation titans, as we may want to call it, is that we all have a sense of identity on who we are, what our strengths are. From identity comes substance, and from that substance you can derive a purpose, and from that purpose you will have mileage, you'll have a lot of speed, you'll have a lot of depth, you'll have a lot of efficiency and efficacy in what you do. I think that's something that is very replicable. It has absolutely nothing to do with age. It's funny that you see a lot of teenagers asking, what am I good at? What do I do? Well, how many 40-year-olds, how many 50-year-olds ask that question? What am I good at? What is my strength? What's my purpose? What is my identity? Who am I? Right? So I feel like we need to ask more and more of those questions. Purpose and identity will be a significant solution, and also an accelerant and a catalyst to whatever we want to achieve in life.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
if
Yeah,
I-
please. Yeah.
oh,
No, go ahead.
Very quickly. If I were just to add to that, I think for me, it's been exactly that. And just taking that one step further is, these are the things that drive me. This is my purpose. But always using I think in terms of, since we're talking about replicability, is always wearing a very systems thinking hat. So this is my purpose and this is my identity, but I'm also rooted in a larger community. So recognizing the embeddedness of, so for example, as a young woman, I had a lot of angst because I would go into interviews and then there would be these elderly male board members who'd be like, oh, you come from the kind of family where they'll marry you off in 2 years. Why are you taking this job? And just feeling a lot of anger about it. But taking a step back, putting on my systems thinking hat and being like, okay, this is the challenge I'm facing at an individual level. But what does that mean in terms of women's labor force participation in India? What are the more systemic barriers and norms that is actually preventing women from occupying spaces in society, whether it's professionally, personally? And so, so in my career, what I have done, I've always been a generalist in the social impact space. So I always go back to these first principle things that motivate me, put on my systems thinking hat, and then respond to, okay, I feel very strongly about women's economic empowerment, and I feel enraged that as a woman, I have to be asked these questions about my motivation over and over again, but what does that mean systemically? So and these are the kind of conversations and thoughts that led to the current big product that I am working on at my organization, which is a $25 million Women's Economic Empowerment Fund, where we are deploying unrestricted funding to small and medium organizations that are working on the very hard work of norms change and basically change at a level which creates safe spaces for women to be able to economically thrive in whatever career they choose. So I think if I were to just add to what Vivek said, systems thinking, identity, your identity and purpose, and how that is so deeply embedded in your community and in your context.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Sidhu.
Please go ahead. I'm going to give you guys like 10 seconds, 20 seconds each to like respond so that we can then get the audience going.
One of the things I think I'm going to quickly add to, we're talking about purpose, we're talking about identity, we're talking about systems, but all of that is rooted in evolution, right? One of the things which is fundamentally important to identify is that none of us sitting in this generation of titans would be possible if not for the values that our parents created and embedded in us. I grew up in an environment where I saw there was already equity between my father and my mother. They both were surgeons. And my dad supported my mom and vice versa. The values that our parents and our previous generation have inculcated in us and the values that we will inculcate in the next generation is evolution. One wouldn't be possible without the other. So saying that I disrupted something on my own is going to be a fallacy. It is not. It was very much there that was inculcated in me by my parents is what I took forward to create the legacy that I'm building. So the purpose and identity, because Vivek, you talked about it, it was already embedded in me. And purpose is evolutionary. What I wanted out of my life at 19 is not what I want in my mid-30s. And it's not going to be the same when I'm going to be at 40, because I know that I now want to be the first Asian woman to go IPO on a NASDAQ or a NYSE because I want to create that legacy. Once I've done that, then what? That evolution is super important, and to identify that evolution, that purpose is evolutionary is also very important. And identity, to me, is not without, like you said, the discipline, my parents, my next generation, my friends, this fraternity. Like I have known MR for many years, and you know, and I've been a part of Indiaspora, and I've seen Indiaspora evolving, right? So to me, evolution is the only constant. Because that is the only thing that will ensure that you keep taking your legacy forward. And you should not stop at what your purpose is today. Because your identity is also going to be decided even after you're gone. People didn't even know Nikola Tesla. He died poor and out of depression in a room in New York. But his 800 patents get used today. So your purpose and identity is not just when you're living, it's also when you're gone.
Amazing.
So this is your homework assignment for all of you. Next time we meet up at an Indiaspora event, one of us is going to put you on the spot and ask you, read out your identity statement, read out your purpose statement.
No, I love it. I love it. Anto, go ahead.
I mean, I think everyone's covered the first question, and
Yes.
I'd rather
Great.
start
Thank
the
you.
second
Thank
one.
you. Great. This is why
So I have
love
more
you.
time. Right? But yeah, I think, so the first question was about repetition and sort of how you can create replicatable, systems,
Yeah.
how can you evolve through the process, and how identity and purpose plays a role. But I think the second one's about what keeps you up at night and what's your fear, right? And I think this is a very, very interesting question, especially, and why I said I want to start with this is because I mentioned I was that irrational optimist when I started under 25 when I was 18, but today I'm 28 and I don't know if that's my story. And the reason why I say that is because so much of what you perceive gets colored by your past experiences. And so much of how willing you were to sort of take those risks and be at the forefront of what you thought your purpose was gets colored by the proof points that you have had in the past. And what you are being is essentially what you were, not what your possibilities can be. And I think when I was in school, when I was in college, I had so much want to sort of really, get into something. I'll give you the smallest example. We were such dreamers that I would just say that let's invite Barack Obama to come and speak at the Under 25 Summit. We have 100 people in attendance, but I kid you not, we have made the biggest campaign called Dear Obama. I have rallied thousands of students to go and tweet at him. I've done things that most people cannot possibly imagine, that I've gotten a response from his team. And at that time, you're doing that only because you think it's possible. You think that there is a possibility to make this happen. But today, oh my God, you have to figure this out. You have to talk to this part of the government. You have to go meet these ambassadors. You have to do 20 other things. You don't have the budgets to make this happen. Do you have this helicopter? Do you have the fuel? What carbon footprint of the... My God! Right? Are you really going to take make that moment happen? Are you going to take the leap of faith? Are you going to believe in yourself because you thought there was a possibility? And I think that fears me. And that fears me because at that time, Anto was completely driven by the purpose, but while you keep going forward, that gets colored by vanity, validation, reputation. That gets
Wait.
colored by...
Wait until you're married and you have kids. just wait. This is my phone. This is stickers for my daughter.
Oh my God, exactly, right? And so the reason and your decision making completely changes. What drives you changes. How you're going to take that leap of faith changes, and will Anto be the same Anto that was that driven and irrationally optimistic when he was 18? And I think for me that's my biggest fear. How can I continue to be the version of me that is being and staying in the present, here and now, truly willing to take that possibility forward because of my insatiable want, not colored by the past? That's number one. It's broken into three parts: having, doing, and being. What do I do because what do I want to have, but who am I being today to make that happen? And who am I being today comes from the place of my voice of judgment, my voice of fear, and my voice of cynicism. Every time I walk into a room, now I'm thinking 100 things because I'm judging, I have cynicism in me because I have whatever colored experiences from the past, and I'm fearful about three other things that sort of are going to become a problem. And that's ridiculous because none of that existed when I was 18. I was so beautiful because I could just walk into a room and be me, right? And that's amazing. That's number one.
You're still a
Yeah,
beautiful
yeah,
you, right? You can still be your authentic self.
Yes,
It's
yes.
very clear. Yes.
And the second part is what I've come to realize is that the whole of this game called life is cyclical, is so cyclical that you're going to go through several cycles of it. So technically, evolution is repetitive. You will go
absolutely,
through
absolutely.
different developmental stages, and each developmental stages will have a thesis, an antithesis, and a synthesis of that. And that synthesis becomes the new thesis, which will then have the antithesis, and then you'll have a new synthesis again. And I think it's continuously going to be like this. So who can you choose to be? You can choose to be the person that is willing to accept that I don't want to operate out of the drama triangle that life throws at me. Do I want to play victim? Do I want to play villain? Do I want to play savior? Or do I want to step out of this entire triangle and say, this is the new possibility that I have. This is who I am today. I mean, today I say that instead of vanity, validation, and reputation, I'm choosing health, wealth, and family. And that health, wealth, and family will now change into, it'll have its own antithesis and I'll see its own downfall. But when things fall apart, are you willing to take that groundlessness as your biggest opportunity to not hold on to anything and come back to ground zero and start realizing you're part of the next developmental stage? As long as that willingness exists, you're listening to what is truly you. And in that hope, I really hope that starry-eyed, excited Anto never fails, never dies because of that fear that he had from what he saw in the last 10 years. Or, what the possibility possibly can be in the next decade. And I think that's what I want for every student in this country to possibly have, that want.
One of the things, Anto, you said, and Ajit, I'll make it very quick. You talked about family and you talked about death. I sleep very well at night, right? When somebody asked me what keeps you awake, I said, that's bullshit. I sleep very well, and I would urge everyone.
Because you're already a millionaire when you're 25.
Trust me, I don't think I think not every millionaire and billionaire sleeps well at night. I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from truth, transparency, and acceptance. And why I'm being very truthful today and being the authentic self that Anto talked about is people are always chasing things. The only thing I'm chasing is to keep my family together. What actually worries me is that my parents are aging. I'm the only child of my parents. And when I'm away from them, that $1 million in the bank multi-million dollars in the bank also doesn't give you peace. What gives you peace is, am I spending enough moments with them?
Yep.
If they're gone and I'm not by their side, will I be able to forgive myself? Because the sacrifices they make until you become a parent, you don't realize it. And Vivek, you talked about it very beautifully. You are nothing without your family. You're nothing without that nucleus, that system that holds you together. So that starry-eyed girl at 16, and Anto, like you, I used to hustle and sell chocolates, homemade chocolates, and sell at my college to make extra pocket money, is gone. Now is a daughter that sees an aging parent, who craves for my attention, and sometimes I feel guilty that I'm not able to give that enough. So I promised myself this. I've given myself 5 more years to exit, to get out of this, because money alone doesn't give you anything. It's a byproduct of your own emotions. So that I can spend more time with my parents, and the things that my dad wished for, that he couldn't do because he was hustling and being the fantastic doctor that he is, I can give him that. Take him around the world. They want to see
42nd Street.
Yeah, 42nd Street. I have a home there, so so take them, travel with them around the world. Support my dad in writing the last book that he's working on, and ensure it gets published, and have him sit here instead of me and be his spokesperson. I think that's
It's also
what
really
keeps me
interesting. I mean, you think we're talking about evolution of relationships, right? I feel like maybe we're all here where our parents have become our friends.
Yes.
And they actually really love hanging out with us.
It's a journey. It's a journey.
It's a journey. It's a journey. You're getting there.
I've gotten there. But I'm saying it's still a journey.
It's still a
you
journey.
don't wake up one day.
You don't wake up one day. But it is kind of interesting that what used to be a tussle has now become an understanding,
beautiful, yes.
and it's become beautiful. And you're right.
And you
I
value
took
that
mine to
tussle now.
Iceland, right? And there's nothing like it, right? Take those 10 days and make it
My
happen.
dad wants to see the
Yeah.
northern lights, and I just want to ensure that I don't lose that because I'm doing what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah.
That's what, when I wake up, my first contemplating thoughts are that, not the business. Because I have somebody like a Hardik who can run the show. And I built a team, and one thing I learned as an entrepreneur is, if you're a really good entrepreneur, you hire people who are better than you. Make notes of things you're not good at, and never be attached. Learn to be detached. Because unless you're able to let go, you can't let something in.
So let me
now,
summarize.
as-
I'm going
as-
to summarize so that way we can let them ask.
Sure,
them
just one quick
questions,
comment.
right?
Now that you all have an inside perspective of highly ambitious titans, now you know the weight of the ambitions that we have on our shoulder. Never take
Yeah.
us for granted.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Never
Correct.
take us for
Beautiful.
granted.
No, I beautiful. Beautifully,
Absolutely. It's
beautifully
two sides
said.
of the coin, Vivek,
And
And-
it's also about redefining or reimagining what words like titan, boss lady, what do those even mean? Because you internalize a lot of these narratives of what these behaviors should be and act according to that, and not according to what your authentic voice for example, when your parents are aging, you're like, oh, but I'm a boss girl, I can have it all. But you're like, no, but I really want to be spending that time with my parents.
Malvika, just a summary before
Yeah.
Ajayita says
Yeah.
this, that my dad always said one thing, and I value it even more now. Tell me the last 10 billionaires you remember 40 years back. None. But people will never forget the way you treated them.
Yep.
Kindness, empathy, and compassion supersedes any number of money and notes you have in your bank. And that's going to be my legacy.
Amazing. So I don't even think I need to really summarize what we've already said, but I actually loved what you said as a last piece, right? That like I'm hoping that the audience got a chance to get insights around what the burden, the weight, the responsibility, the thinking is behind people that are, I guess, titans. But I think the summarizing of the Titan phrase, I think what I think again appreciate is that, for me, the four pieces, right? Systems thinking, identity, purpose, evolution, authenticity, value, and of course respect, I think is what really
Very, very pivotal level, it is to sort of tell them that there is a hidden price to pay for any choice that you make. But that hidden price to pay is sometimes yourself and how you burn out and you lose your innate sense of being. And to not have that, because we're in a very hyper-aware environment, and when you get more and more aware, you sort of lose that insatiable desire that you had when you were a dreamer, when you were young, when you were a believer. So how can you sustain that for as long as you can? I think that's the one thing that I'll always leave every young person with, to not burn yourself out in the process. And the burnout is real if you don't have the right kind of people holding you in the process.
One thing on top of what Anto said, because this world, and one of the things our parents had, which we don't, I think they had a little more peace of mind with not such crazy social media and something constantly criticizing you. Please take mental health seriously. Because Anto talked about it, and I'm telling you, I'm very open about things. Why I say mental health is very important is because I have battled depression, and it's not a good place to be in.
Yes.
Right?
It's very real.
And it's important to identify when you're seeing that signs. And I'll tell you where depression stems from. The constant need and the innate need to please. People pleasing takes away authenticity. Nobody is going to come to take care of you. It's you and you alone. So self-love, self-care, mental health should be the priority of this generation.
Yes, absolutely.
That's it. Everything else will fall in place. If you take care of that, trust me, success is not a definitive thing. It's not written in law. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes, the next question.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Nitin Bajaj. I've gotten to know pretty much all of you over
We love
the
you,
past couple
Nitin.
of years. Same here. So congratulations and kudos for all that you've accomplished so far. My question is for Vivek. Vivek, I would love for you for the aspiring and future parents, tell them how you were able to get your 5-year-old to put stickers in that order. I'm very curious.
That everyone gets.
That's a very optimistic picture that you painted there.
Yes.
Yeah. I think there's a very important Indian diaspora member. His name is Dr. Seturaman Panchanathan. Panch is one of my mentors. The same problem Anto was talking about, right? So I faced that probably like 5 years ago. Family, for us, family is not parents. Family is our own family, like my wife, kids, and all that comes with it. I was telling Dr. Panch that, hey, I'm going to get married, and it's going to be a lot of weight on me. And the way he taught me was, it's actually a source of power for you. Draw power from your family, draw purpose from your family, not just your parents, but also your wife and your kids, right? So face your fears, convert that into an element of power. I think some of you may have heard me say the story. There's a book called She Has Her Mother's Smile. Every one of you should read it.
Yeah, it's a very good
This is a very, very important book. It talks about genes and genetics. I'll just give you a small snippet from that book. In this book, the author conducts an experiment where he takes about 5 or 6 mice. He puts these mice into a box and he inserts a smell into that box. every time the mouse feels, every time he inserts that smell, he would pass an electric current to freeze their legs. So he does this once, twice, 10 times, 20 times a day for the next 6 months. So these mice automatically, when you insert that smell, they would think that, oh my God, he's going to freeze my legs. I got to go run around so the electric current does not come and catch me, right? So they were just trained to have this for the next like 6 months. Their brains were so tuned into it. Then what he did was he took all 6 of them, put them in separate boxes. He impregnated them. Each of them had kids. Now he took each of these kids, put them all in separate boxes. There's a large number of sample size, right? So he inserted these baby mice have never been to this experiment. They've never known this experiment. He inserted that smell into that box, and then these baby mice started running around like crazy. Why? He's never frozen their legs. So what does that experiment tell us? It tells us that when you're passing on your genes to the next generation, you're not just passing on your color, you're not just passing on your hair, you're not just passing on your health. You are passing on your brain. You are also passing on your traits, your mindset,
Trauma.
your thinking, your trauma, everything. How do you react? How do you proactively think about different situations, right? So this is a very, very fundamental point that when you have family, when you have kids, it's not just what you're giving them physically, it's also what you're giving them mentally. So you have to be innately strong. You have to have all of those inbuilt into yourself, not teach your kids. Put that into your mind, and then it'll pass on, right? So that is sort of my philosophy on all of this. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you, Nitin. Next question, ma'am.
Is that? Okay. So, Purnima Warrior from United States, I have a suggestion. I suggested to Modi ji there is 50% of the women of India are staying at home. They are not pursuing their dreams because their husbands have stripped their dreams by saying, "मैं कमा रहा हूँ, तो आप घर में बैठो, क्या ज़रूरत है?" Right? But I said that if these 50% women, their children are gone, they have nothing better to do now except take care of the husband, those need to come out and come into the business world and join the entrepreneurial world to do exactly what you are talking about when you are talking about the villages, and some of these can be managed by people that have the passion and they want to help the country and people and everyone. So those 50% women that are empty nesters need to come out and join the entrepreneurial world and support all of you. If you want to know more, I'll let you know, but that's a suggestion. Make use of the people that you have right here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
That's a great point. Thanks for bringing that. Actually, I think it's more than 50%.
Yes.
But there is, oh, can you not hear me?
No, it's not switched on.
Oh, sorry. I was saying it's actually more than 50%, but actually one of the outcomes of India's presidency of the G20 is something that shifts what you're saying on its head. And it's a little bit radical, but I'm very proud that this Indian presidency is championing it, is about what we call the care economy. So those women who are staying at home, it's not like they're unemployed, they're not doing something, they're actually fulfilling an extremely important purpose, which is caretaking, whether it's caretaking for the elderly, for children. But that is work that has always been disregarded in mainstream economic theory. It's always been marginalized, it's been at the fringes. But I think COVID for the first time brought to the forefront how important care work is, and it is an extremely gendered field. And so for the first time, the G20 countries are coming together and looking at mechanisms to finance the care economy and give it the seriousness that it deserves. So, there's multiple routes for women who are not part of the formal labor force to be given the respect, dignity, and financial independence that they deserve. One is certainly the entrepreneurship route and them becoming business owners or them supporting the social enterprise economy, and one is for them to be given respect, dignity, and financing for the very important care work that they do.
And I've been working with Lagu Udyog and MSME
Yep.
at a national level to bring them together. These are engineers, scientists, doctors,
Yep.
you name it, but never practice just because
They had to give up.
Yeah.
But now they have all the time.
Correct. Fantastic.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Just
Yeah.
we have last question, and
Yes,
then
and then
we'll
we
have
sum it up.
closing remarks.
So it's not
Then
a
we'll wrap it up.
question, rather my observation. I come from California. My kids are third generation. And I tell you, when I brought my children from California to India, when they went back to US, my daughter, 13-year-old, saw that every child in the US was in depression. And she also started feeling the same way. And all of a sudden, she comes with this, some idea that, she goes to Target, gets a T-shirt, and she just... And that became such a powerful message. Rappers in America wear her clothing brand called Don't Die Clothing today. And she's saving lives of children who are suicidal because they get inspired. They get inspired. So just go to don'tdieclothing.store and see the work these children are doing today. So what you just said,
Yep.
that mental wellness is, I think, problem for tomorrow. But kids of tomorrow will solve all these problems because these are not necessarily new. I brought PMI to India in 2002. And through that, we trained 100,000 people. NHI chairman would be certified on project management today in the country. 5,000 ISFers have gone through these programs. So it's not that development is happening. There are a lot of contributors. The gentleman sitting, our friend Rajat Gaurav right here, he runs a company which is $500 million revenues. He's transforming the world with how do we goals of corporate enterprises and individuals and teams can be delivered by the execution framework he brings to the table. You should talk to him. It's not only that, all the big companies are doing wonderful job, but people like him, they are stepping up to the next level of challenge. He will soon be $1 billion revenue company, I can very well tell you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that question.
I think, sir, just to summarize,
Yes.
Anto, you brought up two important points. It's people like Rajat is why we are sitting here. We are all first generational. We're all not a part of a big, company or a big economy. We're all trying to disrupt and create our own identity. Second thing is, while we are doing it, we take mental health very seriously. So we're not just trying to pave a path for this generation, but also the next generation, that if you don't shy away from going to a doctor when you sneeze, don't shy away from seeing a doctor and seeking help when you feel that something is not feeling good up there. Because, the gut feeling, that's what they say, right? The brain and the gut has the biggest nerve, the vagus nerve. So listen to it, pay attention, and heal. And over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Som. Thanks for this lovely conversation that we've had so far. But before we wrap it up, I'd like for all of us to give our closing remarks. Anything that we'd like to tell everyone who's present here from
Malvika,
our body
why
of work?
don't you get started?
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming, listening, engaging. Would love. So every time you think I'd get it by now. I would just
Yes.
like to say thank you, everyone, for coming, engaging, being here. Certainly take the title of Titan with a grain of salt. I'm here to learn first. So to respond to your question, I think from the people around the room, I wouldn't want to tell you anything. I would want to learn and listen and see what are the things, your lessons that I could then build off of, because we stand on the shoulders of previous generations. And I think anyone who wants to talk about philanthropy, impact investing, giving in Asia, come find me. I'm more than happy. Always looking for collaboration. Collaboration is at the core of what my organization does. So happy to be working with all of you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhavika. Can we give her a big round of applause, please? Vivek, over to you. Yes.
Let Vivek do it.
Sure. Because we're called titans of the next generation, I'd like to talk to the previous generation, the generation that's before us. You see the amount of empowerment in the next generation, in this current generation. He's talking about his 13-year-old kid. I want you all to go home with a little bit of peace and happiness that we will take as the torchbearers. When you pass the mantle to us, we will absolutely punch beyond your expectations, and we will do a fantastic job in levels that you would not even imagine, in levels that you would not even expect. So I want you all, because the previous generation is always stressed, they're always worried, they're always constantly thinking, oh God, what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there. Take it easy. Take it easy. We got this. Thank you.
You're in the right hands. Yes, thank you, Vivek. Can we give him a big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen? Over to you, Som.
Wow, when my dad named me Shomdatta, and it means the daughter of Shiva, I felt very overwhelmed with the responsibilities that will come with it. I grew up in an environment where Shakti is worshipped, right? We talk about Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, Namo Nama. I grew up learning the Vedas, and I speak Sanskrit fluently, and our Rig Veda starts with the stotrams, Trihi Brahma Bahuvit, which means, woman, you're the ultimate source of enlightenment, thou enlighten us. We women have 2 X chromosomes, and men have an X and Y, but one can't exist without the other. The power of a Titan is to be able to acknowledge that. We're not here to create gender equality, we are here to create equity, not just with gender, but with opportunities, with the positioning that we have in front of us, and with empathy, accountability, and action. And why I say empathy is very, very important is because empathy comes from values. Empathy comes from knowing that we wouldn't have been this generation if not for our parents, like Vivek talked about. We wouldn't have been this generation if not for the people, all the titans besides us who are sitting here, that enabled us to do this, right? And with that comes accountability and action. And today I'm very, very delighted that I've been a part of Indiaspora for 5 years, MR. This just gets better, bigger, and we get an opportunity not just to create for us, but to create for others. And like Malvika said, don't just do something for yourself, but also learn to give back. That's the power of this generation, and that's your legacy.
Somdatta Singh, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause, please. And last but not the least, I just want to say... Please say that out loud. Anto.
Give it up for Anto, guys.
Awesome, but quickly wrapping it up, I have Sri standing there and be like, cut it, stop, already it's time up. We're here, privileged, enjoying this beautiful conversation. Thanks to all of you for being here. Firstly, we're standing on the giant of shoulders. Everyone has mentioned that without everyone who supported this journey, we wouldn't be here, and I think that's great. We are grateful for that. I'm personally grateful for everything that I've had the chance to speak about today, because it comes from genuine passion from the bottom of my heart of how much I believe that we as a young country are capable of doing, and young people of this country are truly, truly magical people, and the potential is unparalleled. It is truly a massive possibility. Last but not the least, I think as we sit here representing Diaspora Next, it is safe to say that we are going to take this mantle forward, do right by it, because guess what, youngsters are not the leaders of tomorrow, we are the leaders of today, and we are here to take action, we are here to drive forward, and we are here to see change happen. Thank you so much. This has been absolute privilege. Thanks for everyone, and see you all outside.
So proud of you. Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Anto. You really rose. Yes, thank you. You too. I didn't know you grew up in Calcutta.
Yes,
Yes.
we do. Yes. Wow.
Such a pleasure, man. We have so many.
Have you heard of an
I love
organization called
your
MAD?
theory on intelligence.